Now it's my pleasure to welcome Tatiana Bilbao as the 23rd Louis I. Kahn Visiting Assistant Professor. Professor Bilbao follows Dan Wood, who occupied the chair in the spring of 2014, and Lisa Gray and Alan Organsky, who were Kahn Visiting Assistant Professors in the last fall term. The Kahn Visiting Assistant Professorship brings young architect educators to our school, offering them the opportunity to lead an advanced studio and, if they wish, a seminar. Tatiana Bilbao graduated in architecture and urbanism from the Universidad Iberoamericana in 1996. From 1998 to 1999, she was an advisor for urban projects at the Urban Housing and Development Office of Mexico City. Professor Bilbao was a partner at the Mexico City-based firm LCM. In 2004, she founded MXDF. I'm going to take a special course in what all these letters mean, together with Derek Dellenkamp, Arturo Ortiz, and Michael Roykind. MXDF was intended as an urban research center for the production of space, its occupation, its defense, and control in Mexico City. But, as Professor Bilbao has shared, because all the architects involved are so busy with their own offices these days, the research center is, and I quote, sleeping. Sorry. Tatiana Bilbao's own busy office, which is definitely not sleeping, was also established in 2004 as an interdisciplinary practice that develops projects of architecture, interiors, and urbanism in Mexico, China, and Europe. In 2007, the practice was one of the top 10 of Architectural Records' annual Design Vanguard survey. In 2010, Bilbao was selected as one of the Architectural League of New York's Emerging Voices, a distinction she shares with the past term's Kahn Visiting Assistant Professors Lisa Gray and Alan Ogansky, who received that award in 2009. She is also the recipient of the 2012 Kunstpreis from Berlin. In 2010, 3 projects from the Bilbao office were acquired by the Centre Georges Pompidou in Paris to be part of that center's architectural permanent collection. In 2012, Professor Bilbao's work was presented in the exhibition Under Construction at the Architektur Gallery in Berlin, Germany. Earlier this year, Professor Bilbao was awarded the Global Award for Sustainable Architecture by the Locus Foundation of the Cité de l'Architecture of Paris and through the patronage of UNESCO. Prior to her term at Yale, Professor Bilbao has taught at her alma mater as well as at the Andres Bello University in Santiago de Chile and at the Peter Behrens School of Architecture in Dusseldorf, Germany. It's been a pleasure to have Tatiana Bilbao among us this term. Her presence in the studio and the seminar room has helped us reaffirm the humanistic basis of architecture as a method of communication. That, as she recently stated, architecture does its best when it is, and I quote, direct, simple, and straightforward. Please join me in welcoming the spring 2015 Kahn Visiting Assistant Professor, Tatiana Bilbao, as she delivers the lecture, Lesson from Two Gardeners. Tatiana.
Thank you, Professor Stern. I'm very, very honored to be here. I'm really having an incredible time at Yale this semester. So for the visiting, really don't go to Cambridge. This is the school. I'm now the biggest fan of the school. I truly say this. The students are great, the faculty is amazing, but Professor Dean makes it all just an incredible experience. The water is okay, by the way. And I truly enjoy better the weather in Mexico, but the rest is really fine here. I will go a little bit in showing some projects that I think are a selection of and a description, a clear description of the ethics of what we do and what we believe as architecture. And I will start saying that we started producing architecture. I studied when parametric architecture was the way to go. I mean, I didn't have a professor like Reklin or Hernan. I wish I did. I really had, I was, when these or Professor Eisenman even would have been much better. But we had like even a very, I would say, analogical way of understanding parametric architecture. And what at the end, why I translated that into a work was trying to understand different geometries with the means I had. We're not a very technological country, and I'm not a very technological person. And so I didn't have the means around me, but I didn't have the means also inside me. I was not educated in a very technological way. So I was starting to do architecture more analogically, more with my hands, more as the architecture I believe with, but I was still trying to look for uncharted geometries. So I did several projects going in that direction, exploring different geometries. This project is of a house in a hillside in Monterrey, in the second largest city of Mexico. And the client wanted a house of a flat house, one floor house. And but he showed me the site, and I said, well, it's clearly difficult to do a one floor house that large. He wanted it was a big program in a hill like that. So I thought, why don't we create a structure that it becomes a fluid space as he wanted, but it adapts a little bit to the topography. So what we did, we started working with a pentagon that adapts to that multiplies, defines every space. So every room, it's a different form. It adapts to the topography, adapts to the trees, and becomes a house that becomes a little bit more fluid than having a one-floor house, but it's not a house that it has 2 floors or 3 floors in a row. So what we did is we accommodated all the public space, like lying down the hill, and we wanted to have like the rooms, more the private part of the house, attached to the hill, a little bit like hanging from the hill. And this way, as I said, you can follow from the living rooms up to the top rooms, going up 1 or 2 steps. So as I said, we were studying a little bit the geometry, going around and identifying how we could manage the pentagon, adapting to the nature, and obviously to the program, and to build it as a house. And then we started working on a project that was an amazing challenge for us, that we're still working on it. We started working in 2005, so it's been almost 10 years that we've worked on it. It's a botanical garden. It's in Culiacán. Culiacán is a city in the north of the country. So what you see as a red dot is Mexico City, and Culiacán is on the north west coast. And Culiacán is a very regular city. If you ever see it as easy as in an aerial photograph. So it's a city that has the same areas as any city in Mexico, 2-floor height. It's very extended. But this city has a particularity. It's the city where the drugs cartels were born. So from all of us in Mexico, in our minds, this city, it's really like the capital of the drugs. Although the city is very safe, the image we have of the city is about people in guns and drug dealing and these things. It's pretty safe because all the most powerful capos are from the city, and obviously they want to keep it safe. Their families are there, their friends are there, and obviously they don't want a city that makes a big buzz for the police or for the military, so they can keep it calm, safe, and they can live in peace. So, but in the other hand, it also has, as well, because it's very, very wealthy with bad money, or illegal money. It is very wealthy also because it has several businesses that have become international and transnational, like this retail company named Coppel. And the president of this company is very proud of this city, and he is the president of the board of this botanical garden. And he decided to donate pieces of his collection to this garden. This garden exists there since 35 years. As I said, the president of the board is this very important businessman from Culiacán, and that wants to make his city a city that it's remembered for different things and not just because of the drug dealers. So he decided, he's also an incredible art collector, so he decided to donate a piece of his collection to the garden. And he decided by doing so to hire a curator, a very important curator, who's now the director of Jumex Collection, someone might heard of it, the David Chipperfield Museum in Mexico City. And so the curator is a very important person in Mexico, and who advised him to what pieces to put in the garden. So first they were discussing what pieces to put in the garden, and then Patrick comes with this idea of, instead of donating pieces of the collection of Coppel in the garden, to commission the artist of his collection to do a site-specific work. So that the project became very ambitious, and then they invited us. They decided they needed an architect to understand the place, to really work with the artist to understand how the pieces could be inserted in this landscape, and how the project could become more reasonable by building spaces like a library, an exhibition room, etc. So we were hired, and when we went there and we saw like how the life of the garden was really an important one for the city, not only for the educational purposes, but also for recreational ones, and also a very representative one, because people, the girls, when they turn 15, they go there to take their own photographs in this setting. So as you can say, it's an icon in the city. It's a place where people recognize as part of the city, as an important part of the city, as a place where they really like to go in special occasions. So we decided to go there, analyze the space, and first, obviously, with our architecture mind, we said, oh, this place is a mess. It was designed by an industrial engineer that loved plants, and that convinced the government to donate a piece of land so that he could make his collection public. And he started little by little adding one path here, one other path here, another building there. So when I arrived there, I said, well, oh my God, what are we gonna do with this? We need to start over. And then I started meeting the people there, and I especially met this guy Felipe, who is the gardener there. And we started understanding the stories behind the garden, and we understood the first very important thing, that we needed to find a way to insert these pieces there and not to try to change the things, because the garden existed. It was very, very rooted in the society, and if we just totally erased everything of that, we would have been attempting on the popularity of the place, or also on the good part of the place. So what we did is we traced the branches of a tree, the existing tree, Guanacastle, of the garden, and we just overlapped it with what existed. And the good part of it is that with a scheme like this, we could adapt the scheme to whatever it existed or to the new things, and it didn't matter, because as being branches, you can move them and they're survivable. They can cut them and the tree could still grow. So that was our idea with the master plan, and we adapted, and we proposed a master plan in the beginning. And my task was to build some, as I said, programmatic structures or pavilions that could allow these new art that came in be understood. No? So I was to do an auditorium, a library, all these things I said, and I said I need to break them in little pavilions and spread them all over the garden. Many things that we did were little interventions, little things like this, a landscape thing. So when I entered, I said, well, this needs to remain as a botanical garden. And it's very important that if the collection is going to be as important as you are saying, because artists were going to range between James Turrell, Dan Graham, Olafur Eliasson, all the big artists, all the big names you can imagine, I said the botanical collection needs to be reinforced and needs to become really an important botanical garden. So what I did is invited a group of landscape ecology of landscape. This is what they call what they do, and so to do little interventions that they look little but they're big, to reinforce botanical collections, to replace the items that were or the species that were affecting other ones, to really enhance the ecosystems, and to do little moves in the insertion of things like, for example, this pond around the bamboo area and reinforce the bamboo collection, or put hammocks to really enjoy the palm collection, or only to reinforce the edges, but to leave the activities just to flourish. In the beginning, I thought, perfect, they do yoga, let's do a yoga a kiosk. Imagine this would be beautiful in the middle of the garden, blah, blah, blah. And then I was talking to this, and Enrique was around, and he said, and what for? And then I was thinking, yeah, what for? I'm going to kill the activity. People are just going to feel really not spontaneously to go there and do a yoga. So we really learned to just do very small moves, like to open the irrigation system so people can really see it, how it goes, and it also makes a beautiful experience. Open little paths to see parts of the collection that were not there, or insert little species that could enhance the landscape, but also the collections. And the same thing the artists did. The artists, this is a piece by Alora and Calzadilla. Alora and Calzadilla, these are two important American artists that represented America in the Art Biennale 3 years ago. And they did this simple, beautiful piece that obviously is the setting of many things in the garden, no? But this is a piece from Dan Graham. Dan Graham came to the garden, it's part of the place, obviously very difficult to photograph, but it has become now the frames of weddings. So what I really like about the whole thing in this botanical garden, and what we definitely didn't intended, it was that this has become an everyday thing for the people. The art has become a discussion of the everyday. And in Mexico, this doesn't happen, especially in a city like Culiacán. In Culiacán, there's no art at all, 0.0, no museums. There's one little museum that has no collection, that has some temporary shows. If we would have the same budget we have by Agustin with his collection, and done a beautiful white box, totally insulated, great light, incredible temperature, controlled temperature, everything, people would never have been there, and people would have never get involved in art. And what is happening now, which is incredible, is how people is really getting involved with art in a very everyday life. This piece by Olafur Eliasson just shows in a subtle way how seasons do change in this place, because the weather is so hot that people normally think it's just a horrible weather, the whole year is so hot, but it doesn't. It really changes, and it changes from spring, summer, fall, winter, etc. So this art, which is a beautiful form, it just has a plan that changes through the year, and it just very subtly explains that. Or this piece, that it's a Richard Long piece, that this is the only artist that was obviously never in the garden, and the art, Agustin, the president of Lord, bought this place for this specific, which was normally in a public space with a beautiful name tag, everything set up for the piece. Nobody touched it, nobody seated it. It was in a public space, but in Culiacán has become the picnic area. And this is great. I mean, for example, this piece is Teresa Margolles, is one of the most controversial artists in Mexico. He deals with the theme of drug dealers. He was the representative of Mexico to the Art Biennale in Venice the same 3 years ago. And these benches are a set of benches that are done with concrete, but poured with the water that were used to wash dead murdered people from drug dealers. So it's a very strong piece, and the idea of the artist is that the people are resting the society is resting in this problem, not saying anything. And for a year, the piece was there without being announced that this was done with this water. the artists always wanted to have the announcement, but we never had, there were technical problems in the garden, they couldn't do it. And at some point when they did it, the people was really, really mad. They went to the press, they went to the government, because this is a public garden, and it became a big thing. So then the garden decided to invite the artists to give a lecture. Then the artist gave a lecture, and finally these people became the first fans of the artist and the first fans of what is happening in the garden. So actually people is getting engaged with art in a very different way, as I'm saying. And if this would have been, these same pieces would have been in the museum, nothing of this had happened. A piece from Marco Rountree, a piece of Atelier Van Lieshout. And what we did is we did a series of little pavilions, and what we did and we're doing, because we're still on the way, a set of little pavilions that our idea is always to remind you that you are in a botanical garden. So the first task we needed to comply with a room for an introduction of 7 minutes, for a video introductory of the garden for 7 minutes. And we decided to convince everybody to do an open structure. So the introduction would be given in an auditorium that's open. It was a difficult task because they're used to have these air conditioning buildings. So they actually were imagining a building like with 4 walls and a roof with a screen, with an air conditioning. And we said, we need to open it. If you're going to go in there and visit for 3 hours, you can sure sit for 7 minutes and see this introductory video. And if not, you must find out in the introduction that you don't want to stay in this place. So we did. We only did a place that it's open, benches, and a series of walls that define the space, so they can create also a little hall of waiting hall, so people from the next tour can wait outside. So actually fulfilling the program, but in a different way. And the same strategy we did in all the buildings. And we did this, as I said, set of buildings that we wanted to break in the lowest or in the minimal possible way, programmatically breaking them in the minimal possible way to, as again, make you feel always that you're in a botanical garden. So we did see these 3 set of buildings in a different location that are an educational room for kids, an auditorium, and a service area. And they are all spread out, and the idea is that when you are in the auditorium, like here, you want to go to the toilet, you need to go outside. You need to feel the heat, normally it's the heat, or the rain, or the birds singing, or the leaves singing because of the wind, whatever. You need to feel that you're in the middle of a botanical garden. So we did these 3 structures, or these pavilions that relate to each other depending on the use, obviously for function uses, and we repeat the scheme several times. So this is the way we are adding pavilions in the whole garden. Some artists have also decided to relate to our buildings. This is the little bumps you see in front of the buildings. It's there was an existing little hut for educational purposes in the garden that we turned down, and the artist Tercero Quinto decided to keep the ruins and add them as a landscape or a playground in front of our buildings. We also have a collaboration with other artists, like Diana Titter did a piece for the interior of the auditorium, or Rivane Nieuwswander from Brazil did a very nice piece for a chalkboard in the interior of the educational room. So a big list of artists is working in the garden, but also as architects, we're doing several more of these little pavilions all over that comprehend an exhibition room, a library. Now we're building the storage, the laboratories, the herbarium, the greenhouse, the study greenhouse, not the public greenhouse, the offices, and soon we will start building the other buildings, cafeteria, and some things. This is a work in progress. Another thing that I forgot to say, our idea in terms of how we define the building, aesthetically speaking, it was to use one sole material that could work aesthetically, structurally, for insulation, and for doing the whole building. So actually it's a shell that it's 30 centimeters wide. So the slab that is the support slab and the walls and the roof is all 30 centimeters thick of poured concrete, and it creates these little shells. In the middle of them, in the center, nothing is in it. No, there's no structure. The column you see here supports the mid-level, but it doesn't support the roof. So as I said, they're little shells that in our sense of seeing it, they're like little rocks that arrive to the garden and that can dialogue a little bit with the nature. Also, we want them to at some point be eaten by the nature if it's the case. Then another project that we were developing at the same time, and it's really a contradiction. We were developing a place where life starts, and we were developing at the same time where life ends. So we were developing this funeral house in San Luis Potosi. And I don't know much about funeral houses here in the US, but in Mexico they're really tetric. They're horrible. You feel there, I think that even like if you were dying, because they're really bad places. They're horrible. So we decided to do a place that would, if you didn't like the place, at least you would be so mad at it. So it would be so dramatic that you should be mad at it, so you could forget a little bit about your moment, the moment you were having there, no? So what we created, we wanted to do a place that was dramatic, as I said, and changing in light in many ways. So what we did is a main hall that had the 5 chapels around. Normally in Mexico, the funerals are like the mooring chapel. It's everything, and then the halls are very little, and everybody's in the hall because nobody wants to speak where the body is, so they all go out. So what we did is we created a big hall that it's very dramatic, but also inside of the chapels, what we did is we created a different idea of having a small like living room, and then the mooring chapel, and then a garden, a private garden. So you can have like 3 stages of privacy. The garden is being very private, then where the body is being more private, then the social area a little bit more public, and then the hall. So as I said, we wanted to be very dramatic, and we wanted to use a little bit to relate to the place. The place is San Luis Potosi. It's in the northeast part of Mexico, between Mexico City and Monterrey, for those that you know a little bit the geographics of Mexico. It's very desertic, the place, but the place has this aggregate that has this color. So we wanted to use the aggregate, and what we did here, we started experimenting with the hand labor. We started understanding that our architecture was still very hard to be rooted in this place in Mexico. So, but still, what we did here is we knew that the contractor was going to be the guy that did the maintenance for the funeral houses of these families. They have more of these businesses. And we knew that the guy doing the plumbing, the maintenance of every day, was going to be the contractor. So we knew that this was not going to be a very skilled hand labor. So we decided to understand what was their capabilities. We knew we wanted concrete, and we knew we wanted the aggregate of the area. So we did like 1,000 mock-ups before we started even designing to understand it. And then we understood that we had to define a space that would be rich enough, that as readable as the space, as this one. And it didn't matter if the finishes were not perfect, because the definition of our architecture was going to be within the entire definition of the space and not the definition of the final detail. Otherwise, we would have been totally frustrated, because as I said, we knew since the beginning that these things were going to happen. And so we did that, and we created, as I said, this building with this hall. We put it in exposed concrete that we did with this aggregate of the area, and that therefore the color. We created a formwork that it had this texture in order to not hide, but to enhance the idea of the errors and the imperfections. And but also in the interior, we tried to treat it as a very peaceful and beautiful place. But I think that the most important lesson that I learned, that I already had started to learn in the funeral house, was building this house. And ironically enough, this house was not designed by me. This house was an idea of Gabriel Orozco, who's one of the most important contemporary artists. I don't know if you know it. He's a Mexican contemporary artist that is exposed in all over the world. And he decided, it's a funny story, I'm going to tell you a little bit because I think students can learn from it. When we had no work, we went out of school, we had no work. We were doing competitions, little things for, the garage of an uncle, and these little things, and doing competitions all over the world. And we said, we need to do more fun things. And we were designing a house in the moon. We probably thought that we were going to be designing houses in the moon. And then we decided to design a house for Gabriel Orozco, who we admire his work. And then we decided to show it to him. We didn't know him, but we found a way to get to him. We found him, we knock on his door, we show him the design. He laughed a lot, obviously, but he liked it. He liked the idea of three students out of school designing a house for him. He followed it a little bit, and 5 years after, he arrives to my office with a little mug, knocking on the door, saying, Tatiana, you need to help me. So you never know who you work for. And it obviously was an incredible experience working for Gabriel Orozco for 3 years, with Gabriel Orozco for 3 years. He's a little bit obsessive, and we learned so many things about it. But I think the most important thing that I learned was from this little guy, from Felipe. Felipe is the leader of the community, and now it has become, the house is here in the shore of Oaxaca. This is Mexico City, this is the shore of Oaxaca. So Felipe is the leader of the community. It's a fishing village, and he now became part of the property manager. And we decided through him to hire the people from the village to build the house for many reasons, but basically because it was the easiest thing. But obviously these people were not trained. The hand labor was absolutely not trained. They never had read a plan. They don't read. They don't know how to read. So imagine a plan, forget about it. So all the plans that we did for a year, they were in my drawer for the rest of the construction. And then we needed to translate. So what our task was to translate this observatory that Gabriel wanted to put in this place that exists in India, and transform it into a house and build it in this place, in this wonderful place. So it's a simple geometry. It's a semisphere and 4 rooms, actually 8 walls that support the semisphere and create the rooms. So I thought it's pretty simple. How simple can it be to build it? I thought it was a very simple task. It turned out very difficult. Obviously, imagine people not knowing how to read to build this semisphere. But it was incredibly fun to understand how willing these people were, how creative they were, although they never have ever thought even of geometry, and the results were amazing. So what I really learned from here is that we didn't need to create and to still searching about these uncharted geometries to create an incredible contemporary dramatic space. We could work with geometry, with pre-existing geometry, with the hand labor we have in Mexico, as we did in the funeral house, and still do contemporary architecture in our country, in our context, and much more rooted. And that's when I started to become, I think, more honest with who am I and with what my architecture wanted to be. And from then we started doing these operations of understanding really what were the skills of the people that were going to build it, and what were the conditions of the project and the context. I totally believe that architecture is a built environment. Architecture in many forms it's very useful to do it in a graphic way, in a written way, but it is not completed as it's not a space. So in this case, for this project, we got a client that had a budget of $100,000. with a program, a very extended program of a house of 300 square meters, which is 3,000 square feet. Like with a studio, walk-in closet, a beautiful program. Then she left and left us with all these requirements, and I thought, well, we have to ask her to double the budget or to decrease the house in half, because it's not possible. The maths don't add. And then I thought, we're not going to build nothing if we say that, because she doesn't have the double of the budget, and she wants a house this size. So why don't we find a solution? So we decided to first understand if there was a material that would allow us to do that. And we understood that compacted earth, rammed earth, would allow us to do it. And so we understood the use of the material. We understood how it worked. We understood how we could use it in the easiest way to create these spaces. So it would, obviously, we didn't took the material to the extreme, so it wouldn't cost more in order to fulfill the client needs. And we were able. We finally decided to create this structure that was based in the module that the construction guy that knew how to build this, how to use this technique knew and had. Because as I said, if we wanted to experiment, this would have become more expensive. So we needed to go to the standards, or at least to what the standards of the things we had in hand. And what we did is we did that. We knew that he had a mold that it was 60 centimeters, so we needed to module the house in 60 centimeters all the way. So we decided to do 2 squares, one that would contain the public space, one that would continue the public space of the house, that would have the more private space of the house, and then 2 overlapped squares that would have all the services. And as you say, as obvious, we needed to have a very simple finish because we didn't have enough money to do everything. And so we used the rammed earth for everything. You see there 2 columns. There are the 2 rain drainage tubes. And everything was done with the rammed earth and the concrete slabs to make it cheaper. At the end, this idea of working with this client, involving her with the idea of doing a research first in the material and then becoming the material, the director of our design, was an incredible process to understand how important it is to involve the client. She feels this is her house. Now we're working with her for another house, for her permanent house, because it's a weekend house in Guadalajara. And it's obviously because we were very successful in understanding her needs and translating them into a house. So as I said, we moved into working in a very geometric way, obviously trying to take geometry to extremes, but starting from geometry. And this is the same way we did this spectacle center in Mexico. It's called Palenque, but I was trying to find the word. It's more like a spectacle center with a special spectacle that it shows in a Roman-like theater, so where the artist goes in the middle. So we decided to create it as a building that has this structure that goes around this round scenario, and round seating area. And we created the balconies, and we created these hallways that allow people that bring the people from the exterior to the interior and into all the seating areas, but also allow it for a different program. Obviously, it's a nod to Frank Lloyd Wright Guggenheim, but we wanted to understand these rings as something that could give something else. So the client asked us for a cultural center, spectacle center that probably was going to be open for 60 days a year, and it was in a fair resident. And what we decided is to create these rings that bring people in, that become the circulation, but also become the activity in the interior and the exterior. So what we did is we created the restaurants, the bars, and the stores, and these little things that they asked us already in the program that they bring when they came in. But we create these rings that allow people to go from the inside, but also from the exterior, so this building could be used also when an event was not happening. I think also architecture has that responsibility, adding something to the community. I think a building inserted in a community that has a very important impact, and not thinking on that is really not my way of thinking of architecture. And for example, this building, they wanted to create a building that in a university in Culiacán, in the same city of the Botanical Garden, that would be the link between the city and the campus is gated, and you can see the gate there. And in the beginning, they wanted to do the building inside the campus, and I said, if you want to create a building that it becomes the link between the city and the campus, you need to bring the building to the city, otherwise it's not going to be ever nothing. So we pushed them, and we pushed them to bring really the building into the city. We decided to leave the program as they wanted. They wanted rectangle floors of 1,000 square meters that were flexible enough to hold different types of companies. And we did that. We only just stacked them in different ways, so we could create shadow for terraces and for different purposes in the interior. But the main thing, as I said, is that I do believe that architecture can give something else, a little something else. And we also forced them to create an auditorium that could be used and rented from any people in the society. So the building is actually part of the society, part of the public realm. In Mexico, the universities and technological campuses are all gated communities. Most all of them. So as I said, we started doing these projects, and right away from the house of Gabriel Orozco, we did this house that comes from a very archetypical form of a house, and this design was for a project in China, a very crazy project in China, of 100 houses done by 100 different architects. This house was never built, but the idea of this house being modulated in 7 modules and create a volume from the abstraction of a piece of each volume, and I'm not going to go into describe why we have actually abstract one of each pieces, gave us the result as a building, as a house that could be ventilated and illuminated within its volume, but it could also be very flexible. And we got a project in Mexico to design a house for the lowest part of the pyramid, which is the people that cannot even get a loan from the workers' bank, which is Infonavit. And these people have really very low income, normally no formal jobs or no jobs at all. And they get these houses from the government that are really horrible. They cost from $5,000 to $8,000, and we got the task to design one of those. So what we did is first we started designing from many references. We knew all the projects from Alejandro Aravena, Lacatón Basal, and we looked for many other ones, Architecture of Humanity, Africa, blah, blah, blah. And then we went into starting designing our own project, and we decided that we were designing for no one, that we really needed to understand what the people wanted. And we went out and did like 2,000 interviews and understand 2 very important things. That people wanted a house that looked like a house, and the main reason was because in Mexico, since the 60s, there were a lot of houses that were left built in one floor with steel bars to the exterior, and to be like grown up in the future, and that they never did. So in that moment, that represented really like a sign of ambition and of growing up and getting more money. But actually, at the end, none of these houses, or mostly none of them, got the second floor, so all remained with the steel bars on the top. And these become like a sign of failure. So people really didn't want to have a house that was 1 floor flat because of that. That was the main reason. So that's the main reason why they wanted a house that looked like a house. And the second thing they wanted is that they wanted, obviously, a thing that could be expandable. But if it didn't look finished, the house, they preferred to not have the expansion to be possible. I mean, they were willing to give away the expansion. So what we thought is, why didn't we took our model we used for Ordos, because it allowed us to have a module that it was expandable, but also it allowed us to build a part that it could be built in a very strong material, because this is the second finding we did, that they really wanted a house that was with strong material. They name it with material, and it's like strong material. And the rest we could fill it with a different material that would allow us to arrive to the budget, to give a larger space, a house that can become expandable, but it didn't look like. So we did the main part of the house with a hard material, and the rest we could do it with a material that would be more unpermanent. So in this case, we wanted to give more square meters. In this case, we achieved to give more cubic meters for the same amount of money. And as I said, we did it in our model of Ordos, adapting it, doing the steady part with bricks or panel, and doing the rest with pallets, with industrial pallets. And we did two models, a rural house, and that has a kitchen in the exterior, because the rural people have more of these necessities. Also, the modulation allows us to be more adaptable to the community and to the climate. And we did a suburban house that has more modern idea of a house, of having the bathroom inside of where the rooms are, and the kitchen integrated with the living area. And we did two prototypes. We built them in Chiapas, and soon they're now going into, the company that hired us is going into Tramits to get the finance name of the institution she will become, to give these credits away and start building right away. We should be building this in, she says thousands, but I don't know, very near, in a very near future. The last project I'm going to go through very quickly is a pilgrimage route we did in Jalisco, in the state of Jalisco. Jalisco is a state here. This is Mexico City. Guadalajara, which is the capital of the state, is the third largest, more important city in Mexico. And we were asked to do an intervention in this pilgrimage route that it's around 100 miles long, but it changes in altitude a lot, so the landscape is very different. And 3 million people walk through it during Holy Week and Easter week. So this week, 3 million people are working there. And the infrastructure they had was very temporary and very non-efficient, obviously. All the villages around really live for this pilgrimage and from this pilgrimage. The neighbors and the people who live there obviously offer the services to the pilgrims that the government obviously doesn't offer. The same pilgrims do their own constructions there in the mountain, like this one, which is a little chapel and a little sitting and resting place. And it's really a truly important pilgrimage for these people. And what we decided is that it was such a big project to do it ourselves. And I do believe that architecture needs much more than one mind to become an important thing, especially in a project like that. So what we did is I invited Derek Delecam to do the master plan, who's another Mexican architect. And together we created a master plan, and we decided to invite architects from different parts of the world. We invited Ai Weiwei from China, we invited Alejandro Aravena from Chile, and we invited Kristen Gantemey from Switzerland, HHF also from Switzerland. And what we did is we did a master plan with the government to understand where we could do interventions, where we could put medical services, sanitary services, trash containers, places to eat, places to rest, water supply, etc. And then where we could put these places of worship, of veneration, of rest, of points of interest. And this is the points where we convince the government to invite different architects. Obviously, the government say, come on, I hired one architect. Now you want me to deal with 10? This is no way. So we said, no, don't worry, you will deal with us, and we'll deal with the rest. And that way they were happy to do it. And so what we did is we gather all the information from all the teams, and we bring them to construction plans, and we're doing the construction supervision. And the first meeting point of the place, is the Chapel of Gratitude, which is an open chapel that we did, Derek and I did, in obvious reference to Matthias Gerritz. And what we did is a very simple form of using the most important Catholic symbol. This is a Catholic root, which is the cross. And we just did a virtual cross with 4 walls that we uplifted in the landscape, and creating an open chapel that also can become a reference point. And this is what the government wanted, to first have a reference point in the area so people can spot the start, but also can be part of the route. No? So this is the first spot, and the second one is up there in the mountain. So the route goes around here and arrives there. And the second point is a column done by Kristen Gantenbein, that what they did, it was just a reference point, but at the end, the space also surprisingly has an interior, very spiritual space. The next point you encounter through the route is this wall done by Ai Weiwei, which is just a wall that takes you into the mountain and to the landscape in a very poetic way. Obviously, it now has become the Chinese wall. That's the name of it. And this you encounter at it, but some of the points you really see them from far. And there are 8 stops where they have like these service areas done by Emiliano Godoy, an interior designer, or 8 shelters that now they're built 2, that they are this brick structure that the idea is that they become flexible in terms of how the shape of the space is, because the sites are very different. But they just become one open space that allows ventilation and natural light to come in very easy. So they become, and we decided to put them next to the little villages so they can serve for different purposes while the route is not passing. We also did this open chapel that folds, these 2 walls that folds together and create this open sky space, or this structure by HHF that has become obviously the playground of these little kids that live around. The structure from Alejandra Avena is this structure that just lands in the highest part of the route, and it's very ironically creates a very urban-like space when you are in it, but it actually encompasses the beautiful landscape and the beautiful forest from behind, and people are really taking appropriation of this space. The last point we encounter when you first arrive to the church where the Virgin of the Rosemary is, that the people venerate, is this circle that just encircles the landscape, done by Derek Delekamp, and it's just a simple wall that encircles the landscape. I just wanted to finish with our last project that we just got 2 weeks ago, the permission to build it. It's a house in Spain, and our main idea was to use the 3 conditions that our site has. It's a house for this project named Solo Houses, which I don't know if you know, but there are several young firms doing a different house. Pezzo Bonnerhausen already did one, Studio Mumbai, Office, Su Fujimoto, Johnson Magli, they're all doing a house here. And what our house is that it's taking advantage of the 3 conditions of the flat part of our site, which just has a view of the olive trees that is there. Also, it lifts up to get the view of the whole valley of the surrounding, and also goes down to the little creek that it's in our site to inhabit that space. Our idea was to bring the pyramids back to Spain and to leave the existing part to get ruined and to conquer it back. Thank you very much. With this, I end up, and I open for questions if there are.
Thank you, Tatiana. Wonderful work and wonderful explanation of the work. We welcome questions. We welcome questions from our visitors and from our students alike. Are there questions for our speaker? Yes, so we'll bring a mic.
How does the work that you do at Yale influence your practice?
I didn't speak any about it, sorry, but I am really now working in a lot of social housing projects. I've been very political since many years about it. The policy in Mexico about the production of social housing, which is more the workers' housing, it's very, very bad. It's producing horrible things and places for literally many millions of people living in incredible places. I cannot even describe them. And so I've been very political about it. I finally arrived to meet someone in the government that has a conscience of it, and that's a former student here at Yale by chance. It's Carlos Cedillo. And so since 10 years ago, before he was in there, I was starting to go to this place, the federal agency that produces the houses in Mexico, to try to change something and to be very insistent in changing the way it's done. And in the beginning, they do things that they never are thought to be inhabited. They are thought to be a product of an economy, And I think that I've been working to get that change. Now it's changing, not obviously because of me, but because they realize that this is a big thing, that it's going to be a big social problem if they don't solve it, not only a financial one, because people is abandoning these places because they're horrible, but it's going to be a social problem as well, because these people are insane and they're really unhealthy. And finally, I encountered Carlos, and I'm working in several projects with him. And I thought that in the school we could look at something that it still is not being looked at, because right now people is really worried. I was in the beginning to stop this to be going on, and then how to not do them and do things better. And so right now there are a lot of policies on stopping them and building better things, but they're not looking into what is going to happen to the things that they already built and that they're filled with people. I mean, they're getting abandoned little by little. Some of them have up to 40 to 50% of abandonment, these units, which are units that range from 2,000 but till 20,000 units, houses. So I thought that it was interesting if we in the university could look with the students at these places that are inhabited and that they're being abandoned little by little, and make proposals on what they could be. And then I proposed this to Cedillo, the former student, and he decided to support the studio because he thought it was very interesting and to publish it as a book. So really, people in Mexico realize that there is also a big job to do and trying to think what is going to happen to what they already did.
So that's the studio. Other questions?
Or I was so clear, or it was so terribly bad.
Right. Brendan Buck has a question.
Tatiana, thanks for the lecture. I think the simplicity and clarity of the projects are very clear, and as you said, maybe in reaction to the parametric environment that you were educated in. I wonder if there's a little bit of a holdover or something that you did take with you from that, which is the interest in geometry and cellularity. It seems like all of the buildings are made up of parts that are carefully aligned or misaligned. I wonder if that's a conscious strategy or something that you think is more intuitive and aesthetic. Where do you think that comes from?
It's a little bit of everything. A conscious strategy, as I said, came when I saw the house of Gabriel Orozco, and I decided that I could start with working with geometry and then make spaces and take geometry to the limit and make spaces that were really what I want them to be, no? An architecture that I believe through, it needs to be function, but I also believe that architecture needs to be aesthetic, because I think aesthetic also gives something to our lives. So I intuitively started, I definitely consciously started working with geometric forms, and then intuitively intersecting them with what I feel they could give to the space, these moves or these twists or these extreme use of the geometry at some points could give to the space. No? So it's a little bit of both.
Here's another question. Peggy? Michael, wait, the mic will come down.
The part of your work that really requires background research, with the affordable housing, and you're saying you're going out and really finding out what the people want, and as well as for the route that you're organizing all of the other architects for, and kind of finding out what each place wanted and needed with the government. That kind of research, which isn't traditionally design stuff, which we're trying to do, how do you staff up for that, or how do you actually manage that part of information gathering in your office or connections with other agencies? I'm curious how you do that.
That's a very important part in our process. I think our architecture comes exactly from there, from the idea we get after doing all this analysis. And in different projects, what I do is I invite different people to collaborate. I totally believe in collaboration. And I invite, some projects is sharing it with different colleagues, architects, but many of them, I invite, for example, in the funeral house, we invited a philosopher to start working with us. And I will tell a little story about it, because when we invited the philosopher, we were into the death idea and starting to study death in many ways, and we were speaking about Heidelberg and speaking about death and death and death. And then he came and he said, guys, this project is not about death, it's about the living people that are living a mooring moment, but it's not about death. And that was very important, collaboration. And that's just a funny story to say that I truly believe in collaborations, and I invite different people that I think that we need them to complement our mind to understand the situation. So in the case of the house of the Ajijic house, the rammed earth house, the contractor became our most important collaborator, because that was the first guy we met, and he made us understand the use of the material, and he made us understand how we could build it into budget, and how then to therefore start designing it. Or in the Botanical Garden, we were really a group, including the ecologist of landscape, the Patrick Charpenel, the curator, but also the government representatives, the businessmen, and the people from the garden who were designing how to take the direction of the garden too. So I truly believe that the projects needs more inputs. I think that right now architecture is impossible to be solved by one single mind. I think that architecture right now, it's about collaboration, and we architects probably can be the translator to that into a space, but we need the input and the information of many disciplines. As the world specializes much more and more, I think we even have more opportunities to get these people around us to respond into the best way we can for a project.
There's a question in the back. Hold on, we'll get a microphone for you.
How do you believe that your work with, or your response to low-income housing and finding out what the needs of the people are, reflects the need for architects to be involved in disaster relief, in the sense that that's a portion of a population that gets ignored, I think, by design? How, disaster homes are just, or disaster relief is just deployed, as opposed to the architect being present and relaying that information from them.
Yeah, actually we did also other project for 600 families that lost their house because of mud slide. And we did a project to relocate these 600 families that I didn't show. And but I think that it's very important. I think as in the society, at least in my society, architects, we are relegated because they think we only give aesthetical solutions, but actually we can give a lot of good things and good input to these situations, not only social housing, but also like emergency reliefs, in order to create things that are more, we're trained to do that, more efficient, more fast, and definitely much better. No? We're trained to understand where is the best place to put a window, where is the most efficient place to put a window. Well, at least that's what the architecture curricula is, right? No, I don't know if everybody understands it, but I think that in society it's really we're kind of relegated because of that, because they think we bring more expensive solutions. We bring definitely an ego trip to the plate, and that we don't. I mean, why would we hire an architect if we can do it faster ourselves? But actually, I think that it's both parts the fault. I think as well, we architects don't present ourselves to work for those topics, no? And I think we have to force ourselves a little bit to force society to understand that we can give that solutions.
Here's another question.
Hi. Thank you. This maybe is a bit more of a personal question, but you seem to have such a strong respect and passion for your country and for your culture, as varied as it is. And I just wonder, as a young potentially a young architect myself, has that always been important to you, or is that something that you've come back to, or just how have you evolved that passion?
I think it was always important. My family comes from Spain, so my father's family. So I was born and raised in Mexico, and I think I was born and raised as loving my country, the place where they were taken from their country that expelled them from Spain after the war. So they taught me to love this place, and definitely it was something that it was there. But as I said, when I started studying, I was taught to erase all types of history that I had in my mind, all type of historical references, not only from Mexico but from the world, mainly modern architecture for sure, and to look out more into this globalized world that started to be global and become more and more connected. And to start looking at architecture that was parametric architecture, no? And when I started working, I started like struggling with that idea that was what my education was and what was my reality, my personal reality. As I said, I was not very technological, myself, because I was never. And it's not that no one in the country is. There are many people in the country that are, but I wasn't. And also because I felt that I was missing something. I was living in the center of the city always. I was always very interested. I had family architects building in the modern times. So I was living in this kind of buildings. And I was living with this architecture around. And for me, it was really not... something was missing, and then I realized I needed to go back and to understand modern architecture and to understand a little bit of the history of our architecture that I lived with, that I grew up with, and then things became much more clear for me.
Is there another question? I think that was a beautiful answer, as all this has been. Other questions from anyone in the audience? And I thank our speaker, I think, for a wonderful talk.
Thank you.